This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Good evening. This is the Brighton Central School District, community presentation, and we'll be able to get some feedback, but we're going to start with Dr. McGowan going through a couple of quick topics.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Davis. This is just a very brief presentation that we gave 2 weeks ago at a board meeting regarding the potential purchase of real property from 12 Corners Presbyterian that we have an opportunity right now to pursue. And the board tonight took action in the 5 o'clock meeting to continue along that process to authorize an annual meeting, in other words, a vote on both the purchase of property and the establishment of a new capital reserve, which I'll talk about just very, very briefly. And then the point of the community forum is to be able to discuss that. If anybody has questions about that or any other feedback, as we do twice a year, have a community forum for anybody to come and speak about anything that they would like to for the Board of Education to consider and get questions answered. So the two parcels that we're talking about from 12 Corners Presbyterian run on either side of the parking lot. So one parallel to the high school parking lot. If you imagine that green space, the outbuilding, and about halfway through the parking lot as you pull into 12 Corners Presbyterian on the far left if you're looking directly at the property. And then a parcel behind labeled C on this picture that backs up to essentially the visitors dugout at what is known as the JV baseball field. Right, the backstop there, the tree area at the back of the parking lot behind 12 Corners Presbyterian. Park Center Properties obtained an independent appraisal and then approached the district about the opportunity to purchase. And really for us, that's about land that is right around and adjacent, of course, to our property, would help us in a couple of different ways relative to the exit, and we would hope to be able to do something around the exit from our parking lot, which is problematic along Whitten, especially if you're making a left onto Whitten out of an event, and to protect that green space and have the potential to utilize that more effectively in terms of the athletic space behind the current JV baseball field. I mentioned where these two lots are. Again, the first site, B, so if you take a look again at where that is, adjacent to the parking lot, is just less than an acre. It's in a rectangular shape, and based on the review of the property, it's a site level, it's even with the road grade, it's covered with a lawn area, again, few mature trees, and that outbuilding as well. And then lot C is at the back of the property, about 1.36 acres, and also level continuous grade, which would make it ideal again for development in that area, perhaps to provide more space back up to that athletic field. The project budget for that in total, the appraised value is $400,000. The cost of all of the items that would go into the sale, so the legal representation, engineering, project management, and other administrative expenses are $2,000, so they'd be asking us for $422,000 for the property. Currently, we have in reserves, in the building reserve, $6.5 million. We would need voter authorization to withdraw that, so that's the reason for a vote. You can't withdraw that money without taxpayers approving that. And again, the appraisal used as the basis for the offer was prepared by Midland Appraisal Associates. Important in a sale like this to make sure we're, of course, disclosing and upfront about each of the people involved. Also important to point out to people that market value, so it was appraised at $400,000, is defined as the most probable price which a property should bring in a competitive and open market under conditions requisite to a fair sale. The legal authority and process, just to point out to you, you may obtain real property by gift, grant, device, or purchase. When authorized by a district meeting, in other words, a vote, school authorities of Central School District are authorized to purchase property as may be necessary for school purposes. So there's a lot of question over the summer about how could you approach the sale of Brookside without a vote. But in this case, the law requires a vote to purchase the property and to withdraw from that fund to do so. In the case of selling a property, it not only does not require a vote, it does not allow a vote. You couldn't have chosen to have a vote unless you were compelled by a petition from the community to hold a vote. Just an important distinction to make for people. It's two very different ways of approaching this as required by law. The procedures, again, review the fair market value appraisal, pass a resolution that authorizes the district to enter into negotiations with the owner and enter into a contract for the purchase. contingent on approval from the voters. Prepare and deliver a purchase and sale agreement with contingencies, and have a resolution of contingencies, including obtaining voter approval, and that typically requires 60 days. The timeline, we are obviously at the November 9th, and you did pass that resolution already. We would ask then on January 18th to propose a public hearing, and then on January 25th, have the date, have the vote itself, the special meeting to have that vote. Other considerations, on that day, we are likely to also propose the establishment of a new reserve, a new capital reserve. The reason being, and just the quick primer for the community members watching this, to establish a reserve, you need voter approval to do that. So we've had plenty of times over the years, we've had people vote on propositions to vote on establishing of different types of reserves, vehicle purchase reserve, capital reserve, etc. When you have that authorization, it's up to a certain dollar amount. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are at the maximum for that fund, so we can't put more money into it. We anticipate receiving over $4 million for the sale of Brookside. We need to put that somewhere, and we would like to have a capital reserve to put at least some portion, if not all of those funds there for future capital expenses, for continued revitalization of our capital assets. And as we talked about earlier this evening in that financial outlook that Lou was able to give, that notion of keeping the cost to local taxpayers the same right now, so not costing anybody any more in the local share. Having a capital reserve to be able to draw from really allows for you to do that, to cover local share. So the second item that we would propose on that day is to establish a new capital reserve to be able to accept those funds, the proceeds from the sale. And the useful life would be 10 years for that. And the resolution could be considered as a second proposition for that vote. You've heard this. Do you have any questions at all that I can answer that have come up since the last time?
No, as you talked about, we discussed this opportunity at the last meeting, and I think it's an exciting opportunity. It might be able to let us create a safer space for exit and entrance into the high school. I think that's great. And it also gives us the potential for more athletic space, which I think is a positive as well.
Absolutely. I'll take a seat, and then, of course, you can call anybody up for questions, comments, etc.
Do we have anybody that has a question either about this purchase or any other issue or initiative within the Brighton Central School District? And back there.
I have an issue not directly about the purchase, but more about the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mind taking the podium?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My issue is not so much about the proposal that Dr. McGowan presented, but it has to do with the notice that went out about this particular community forum. I mentioned this at the June 7th meeting, which was the same issue, that only a portion of the community received an email notice about the meeting. At the time, there were a lot of other things going on, so I acknowledge that it probably was not given the seriousness that it really has. But this meeting and that meeting, a notice was sent out to parents of current students. Parents of current students are only a small portion of the community. There are people such as myself who pay school taxes and don't make use of the services. We don't have children in school. There are other neighbors that I have who have 2- and 3-year-olds, and so they're not making use of the services yet. But we're all interested in plans that the school district has for acquiring property or selling property. And it's offensive on multiple levels that my portion of the community is excluded from the special notices that go out. Now, I acknowledge it was on the webpage, but a special notice went out to a portion of the community, not the whole community. And I would like to see this changed for future community fora, because this is not really a community forum, if only a portion of the community received a special notice, it's more a PTSA meeting. And so I would like to present this a little more directly than I did in June, and I think it's something that needs to change.
And I'm sorry, I have the note here. It's Dr. Judy Massara from Idlewood Road, so I appreciate you coming and giving that. Do you?
Dr. Massara, I think it's a very fair point, and I do think we need to think through how we communicate with people that don't have kids in school. So I appreciate the feedback.
I
think you're right.
realize that it's convenient and it's
Yeah.
inexpensive to do it by email. My suggestion would be that you solicit email from my demographic and from younger families
Yeah.
who might want to be put on a wider district email to receive notices of meetings like this one.
Can I just ask, Dan, can anybody sign up for e-news as well?
Yeah, there's a link on our website and in the newsletter that's going out this month, and in past newsletters, there's been a link on the, address on the back where you can do that to sign up for any of the newsletters, email.
Thank you. I wanted to double check because to your point though, right, so that's a capability. I think it would be worthwhile for us to do more to get that word out to people, perhaps a postcard mailing or something that says, this is how we do a lot of communication, here's how you sign up. We'd love to have you getting more of our information. I think it's a very good point.
That would be a good idea.
Great. Thank you.
Maybe we could also encourage families to follow our Facebook and,
Yeah.
because those things, even if you don't go to school here, you can get all of those.
No, it's true, and we do so much that way now too as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great point. So,
The other thing to think about, Dan, might be, and just because I was am involved in the community center discussion, could we find the neighborhood leaders, whether it be Evans Farm, Meadowbrook, and a couple of those, and put those leaders on a distribution as well?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for filling out the cards. Kim, thank you for these. Next up, I'll ask for Heather Coyne on Hollywood Ave.
I don't actually have anything right
Oh,
now.
okay.
Pass along to whoever's next.
Hi,
Okay.
Heather.
How you doing, Heather? Any other questions, issues, discussions, opinions? Yep.
Yeah, it's up there. There's a third card.
No? Amy C., I'm so sorry, Amy. Oakdale Drive. It was stuck to the one in front of it. I apologize.
I'm just kidding. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Amy Shee. I can take this off while I'm speaking?
Yep.
Otherwise, I can't read because my glasses get fogged up. I have a 9th grader and a 7th grader who have been in Brighton schools since they could go to school. And I have 2 topics that I wanted to bring up. The first is about starting school later. I've been a proponent of middle and high school starting no earlier than 8:30 a.m., as medical and pediatric associations have been supporting for decades. I was on the school district's school bell times committee back in 2016 to 2017, which I can't believe it's been that long, but time flies. At that time, to my disappointment, this decision was made to postpone changing any bell times due to a number of barriers, 2 of the largest being the cost of busing and transportation that would be needed to, if changes were made, and the limited space, both indoors and out for athletics and recreation for Brighton students and community members. So many of those barriers are now lessening or have at least led to a need to reevaluate, such as the full-day kindergarten, making changes for busing and transportation, as well as COVID precautions and bus driver shortages. Also, middle and high school students, I think for as long as I know, have often, many parents will drive their children so that they can get that extra amount of sleep. And I have not done a study, but I think that's happening even more this year. It's very crowded. I think especially since the kids were able to get that extra sleep during hybrid and remote learning, they really value that extra sleep, and so I think there's even more parents who are driving their children to school now. The foundation aid money that we were denied for so many years is finally starting to come in, thanks to the efforts of the Fight for Brighton group and school board and administration, so that's great. And then this impending sale of Brookside also, of course, gives us some monies to work with. And I'm very excited about this potential purchase of the land from the Presbyterian Church. So I'm hopeful that all these things can directly or indirectly facilitate later middle and high school start times. And as I'm sure you know, the school district has started a school start time committee again, and I appreciate being let back on it. And I just want to say that, I started caring about this issue and working on it when my kids were in Council Rock and French Road. So even though my kids were not at that age, I knew that's what the science was telling us, and that someday my kids would be there. And now they're there, and I see my early bird who used to get up at 5 a.m. and jump on my bed and wake me up, who's now a cranky, moody 9th grader who can't go to sleep as early as he used to, and of course can't get up as early as he used to. And actually my 7th grader is just starting to get there and is like making fun of his brother now, like, why can't he get up? Why is he always late for school? And I'm like, just wait a few years, honey. So I just want parents and all of us to keep in mind that, we may have children of different ages, but they all hopefully are going to get to this age where they will need this sleep. The other thing I want to talk about is diversity, equity, and inclusion at the schools. I feel like there are more teachers of color here at Brighton than have been there before, and as a parent of color, I appreciate the efforts to get them here. But I feel like we still need many more so that when our kids do have a teacher of color, it's not a shock, it's not an exception, it's like that's the way it is here in Brighton. And studies have shown that kids of all races benefit from having teachers of color. And I think that students of color are more able to embrace and express their true selves when they see themselves in their teachers and other people of authority. And I feel like it's hard for our few teachers who are here. They have double duty where they have to do their teaching and, their usual role, and then they also have to be a race ambassador. So I feel like they're doing double duty, but they don't get paid twice as much. And I feel like we need to make sure that we welcome these teachers and embrace them and make them want to stay here. And I think a big part of that is having administrators that support these teachers. And while I appreciate that we had engaged consultants like Dr. Washington and Renee Baker, I don't think this is enough. The Parents of Families of Color group that I've been involved with for many years now have been talking for a long time about having something like an assistant superintendent of DEI. And, we were really thrilled when Mr. Nunez was hired, and unfortunately he has left, and we can't speculate as to why. But I do think him being here had a very positive impact, definitely like on the members of our group and on kids that he worked with while he was here. And so I think many of the members of the group just want to put out there that, like Pittsford and Penfield, who have hired someone to do DEI work, we should do that here in Brighton. I hope that we can add it to this upcoming budget and have someone in place by the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Amy, I appreciate that, both the start time piece, and I'm glad you're still talking about it. We wouldn't dream of having a committee without you on that, having that discussion. And just really anxious to be able to relook at that and look at what those parameters are, and then it likely will boil down to both where the community sentiment is at that point and what the cost would be, and then a decision whether that makes sense to move forward. So there's no dispute, I don't think, from anybody on the sentiments of cranky 9th graders for sure, and how that works. I get it, and I've lived it myself. My own kids would love that I'm revealing that, but yes, been in the same place. And I think your points are really well taken. Lou gave a great presentation earlier tonight at the 5 o'clock meeting about the work done on the hiring front, and there is much more work to do, and we appreciate that, and the suggestion that you've made as well is point well taken. So thank you.
Any others for comment?
Last call, anybody else?
Last call? Yes, please.
Sorry, I came in a little bit late.
That's
so-
okay. If you just tell us who you are and where you live, and you can take your mask off up there.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Johnston. I live at 670 Eastbrook Lane. I am here this evening to echo Amy's voice and particularly in desire to hire a full-time DEI expert for the district. We see that other districts in the area are moving in this direction. We know that Brighton is a community of leaders, and I want us to step up and take this opportunity to push this initiative forward. I see that we're doing the work, and I commend that we're, working on DEI. We have building-based committees. We have a DEI branch of the PTSA. We have utilized NYU for trainings for teachers and faculty. I think this is great. I also see it as a little bit piecemeal. So I'm here tonight to say that we need to hire a DEI expert full-time in order to have continuity in the work that we're doing. And I'm hoping that this is something that we can look at for next year's budget and put in the works. And I'm here to support that in any way that I can.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. I'll tell you, it's not an idea that we're all at all opposed to, and hasn't been. The work that Renee and Marlo provided was really, really important and continues to be. And I would guess that, although you can't see all their faces, particularly with the masks on, there is so much work happening in the area that is a huge part of the jobs of everybody sitting there. And it is the majority of what Allison is working on, Deanna's working on, Lou is working on. And you're not wrong that having a person that could take a lot of that on would also be very helpful. So I don't think we disagree with you at all. It's a matter of not prioritizing because the work is more or less important. We know how important it is. It is the thread that runs through everything we're doing right now. It's looking at sustainability over time and what can we afford and where are all of our needs. Because we have a significant number of them. We've talked before about administratively, we have about the smallest group in the county and relative to the number of kids and the efforts happening. So where do you deploy your resources most effectively? It is definitely a big part of our conversation, so you're not far off on that at all. So please don't read into it. We're a long way from making proposals at this point, but it is something we wouldn't disagree with you on the importance to.
Okay. No further feedback. Do I can just call it adjourned?
Yeah, just wrap up, I guess.
I thank those who took the time to come and give us the feedback. It is greatly appreciated. And we are adjourned.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.